The James Harden saga has taken another notable twist as Harden has now arrived in Colorado to join the Sixers for training camp. I'm here to break down what that means for the team, what exactly happened when he was under the same roof as the rest of the organization, and how much that changes things from here. There's still plenty to unpack in this. We're just getting started with the James Harden saga, and unfortunately, I don't think we're close to an ending yet. But this is a notable turn that I want to break down what it means for both sides. Before I fully dive into things, I do want to make sure that you guys are hitting the subscribe button. As of now, 87.8% of you guys watching this video have not subscribed yet. The Sixers season is right around the corner now that we have some actual basketball to talk about, some big storylines. The main event is here, and I cannot wait for all the big plans that we have for the season. So I want everybody to be involved with this. But for now, let's dive into the latest news, which we got an update from Adrian Wojnarowski of ESPN in the morning saying James Harden is participating in 76ers practice at Colorado State University this morning. Sources tell ESPN. Harden did skip out on media day with the Sixers as well as the first day of training camp when they did arrive in Colorado State. I like the mindset of doing things in Colorado State, taking a little trip, having everybody go and, go to a different location, being away from everybody. I do think that's helpful. And there's also been some comments made about the psychological aspect of being in the same state as the Nuggets, who just won a championship. We've already seen them doing some cool stuff, like meeting up with Deion Sanders while they're out there. So I like the way that Nick Nurse is structuring things so far, and now James Harden is in the mix. Now, what is most notable about this to me, and we do have some pictures out, for starters, this is coming from the official Sixers team account, that they're just basically posting them up like nothing's wrong. Like, we don't know about all the other backstory or things going on here. It's just thrown up in the mix, looking like the vibes are good. And to be honest, that sounds like all accounts what happened. That James Harden did not cause a stink. He did not kicked out of practice just like Ben Simmons did in the one day that he came in after holding out in an attempt to recoup some of his money. Ben Simmons was kicked out immediately, did not care. That does not seem to be the case with James Harden. Now, I do want to point out, and I want to shout out Believe in 76ers, at Believe in 76ers on Twitter, a guy who has a Sixers podcast as well. But he got some inside information and pictures from in the building. I believe he's the only, non-official traveling media member that I've seen pictures of these from. And it appeared by these that Harden was running with the second team. There was a video that came out that it looked like Tyrese Maxey and D'Anthony Melton were the two starting guards. Now, this can mean a lot of things. I don't want to read too deep in it. For starters, it could just literally be Harden not participating in that drill because they are using sets that he had not gone over yet or he missed over the past 2 days. It also could be the mindset of James Harden. We don't know if you're here for the long term, so we're not putting you in our concrete plans for the season, which is totally valid as well as maybe just making him earn his way back on the team. This is a guy who very clearly is one of the most prestigious talents on the Sixers, but the bottom line is he has not been there to start training camp. So to just hand him this starting role and be the point guard on a silver platter, that does not seem to be the way that Nick Nurse operates, and I like that about Nick Nurse. That I like a little accountability, a little tough love. That's something that this team, this Sixers organization, has needed more of over the past couple years, so it is interesting to see him watching there. Now, one of the other points that I wanted to bring up here, and I'll start by going over Nick Nurse's specific comments, is this was in an article from Tim Bontemps of ESPN today, and Bontemps wrote, "Nothing has changed from Harden's desire to be traded, preferably to the LA Clippers," but Nurse said, "At least from his standpoint, the expectation is Harden will be remaining with the team and is participating in practice in the next 2 days before the team heads to Boston for his preseason over against the Celtics on Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern." Quote, "I think so," Nurse said. "He's here, he knows the schedule, and we expect him to be there. I think we can wait and see on where things go from here, but every indication is that he's here now." So it sounds like James Harden is now in it for the long haul for the Sixers. And there's a lot of reasons that go into this. For starters, the obvious, that it does James Harden no good to sit at home. I've gone over the structure of contracts, how the Sixers could essentially prevent him from being a free agent if he was to hold out for more than 30 days. James Harden is too smart to allow that to happen in this situation. The end goal for James Harden in all of this is to get another massive contract, get another either max deal or near max deal, a long-term agreement and commitment from another organization. That very clearly does not need to be the Sixers at this point. That is his goal. That his end goal of this, regardless of what happens in training camp or with the Sixers this season as a whole, the goal of James Harden is to get another long-term max contract or near max contract that pays him out over the next couple seasons. The best route to do that is not by causing a fuss, causing a scene, and basically wrecking havoc on the Sixers. The reputation of James Harden has already been damaged over the past couple of years by doing similar things, like forcing himself out in Brooklyn, like forcing himself in Houston. And the issue that comes there is, yes, James Harden is still one of the best basketball players on the planet. That even as he physically regresses, that we see he's not quite the same guy that he used to be, there's still moments where you can see it. And the basketball IQ that he possesses, his feel for the game, his ability to play make, these are all things that are going to continue to age with him. But when the nonsense outweighs the productivity, which he is kind of teetering on right now, that's when we begin to see guys fall out. Think about the Johnny Manziels of the NFL, or even if you want to look in the NBA world, guys like Nick Young. And James Harden is obviously much more talented than a Nick Young, but an example of that. Even when you think about like a Zion Williamson or a John Morant situation, that so much of this is weighed with how good is this player versus what is the baggage. For these guys that are fringe NBA guys, you make one mistake. You look at Kai Jones right now, who just went a little crazy on social media. He's away from the team indefinitely. That's because he didn't kind of have that talent barrier to allow for some of the other off-field or off-court distractions to catch up with him. James Harden, to this point, does. That when you're a superstar, you essentially can do what you want, as long as you are good enough on the basketball court. Kyrie Irving is an example of this, is a guy who has caused quite a bit of fuss, has never suited up for a full season in almost a decade now, but the talent is there. That when he is on and when he is locked in, there's no doubt about what a great basketball player he is. James Harden finds himself somewhere in the middle of all these conversations. That, yes, he's still a highly effective NBA player. He's a guy that will continue to age, be able to be a guy that can play make, but he can't be a guy that still thinks he's the superstar. There was a report from Stephen A. Smith yesterday talking about how he heard that James Harden essentially negotiated himself out of a max contract with the Rockets. That the conversation that was had between Harden and the Rockets organization stated the Rockets essentially wanted Harden to come in as basically a play out the rest of his career role. You help grow these young guys. You are a positive influence on the organization. It's a homecoming. Everybody feels good. You get a bag. Everything works out. James Harden didn't quite see it eye to eye like that. He was talking about recouping his ability to be a scoring champion, doing all this, and that's when Ime Udoka put his foot down and said, we're not doing this. We're rolling with Fred VanVleet. I don't care. Now, you can take Stephen A. Smith's word or not. I personally think Stephen A. Smith lays it on a little heavy when he talks about his sources and what he believes and how word for word or how matter-of-fact things are, but he's still one of the big dogs in the industry, and if he's hearing something, I would like to think that it isn't just pulling from the clouds there. I think something along those storylines is notable, and most of it being that Harden just sees the world a little differently than the rest of us do, that he has this mindset. Now, bring it back to the Sixers specifically now, with him being in the building, I have not been, I guess, looking forward to this moment of getting back due to the fear of what he can do, that I do believe there's more damage that can be done by him being in the building, that if it's kind of an out of sight, out of mind situation where he's laying at home and holding out, I don't think there's really any negative that comes from that. I think the vibes outside of James Harden within the Sixers have been very good to start training camp, and I'm excited about that. So I think he can come in and mess that up. But I think my read on the situation is James Harden has too much respect for his teammates to make sure that it is an issue for them. That when you look at around the room, that he's very clearly enjoyed playing with Joel Embiid, Tobias Harris, Tyrese Maxey. He's brought in some of his friends, guys like PJ Tucker, Patrick Beverley, Daniel House. These are guys that James Harden likes, and it's been crystal clear from the start of all this and been reported by numerous sources. This is not an issue of James Harden versus the Sixers, not an issue of James Harden versus Joel Embiid. This is very clearly a Daryl Morey versus James Harden issue. This is very different from the Ben Simmons holdout because of that regard, that it was very clearly the heels that were dug in, or the line that was drawn in the sand, was that Ben Simmons no longer wanted to be with the Sixers or play with Joel Embiid ever again. James Harden is purely a contractual issue that he had a disagreement with Daryl Morey in the way that his feelings are hurt. So it's a little different there. There's a little more of a teeter, a little more of an edge. It looks like his desire is still be traded, but Daryl Morey is very much heels dug in, that he's not going to take less value just because Harden's going to cause a stink. And these guys know each other better than anyone. But for now, if Harden wants to show up, do his job, work hard, nobody should really have any problem with that. That the unfortunate reality for everyone in this situation, that the best route to proceed for each party involved here would be for James Harden to play for the Sixers, to play at a high level, and then see what happens from there. Does a market begin to materialize where there's an offer that could be appealing for the Sixers? Perhaps that's on the table. Is James Harden playing at a high level and in this new Nick Nurse system with more movement and these changes to the offense, all these things, the new pieces brought in, does that elevate the Sixers as a caliber of team? And maybe Harden buys back into the potential of winning a ring? Maybe. We don't know. But the bottom line is for all parties for this to work, the best option is for James Harden to continue, show up, and work like any other player. As long as he's on board with that plan, these Sixers should be as well. So I'm encouraged by what I'm hearing out of camp by now, but it looks like that Harden is at least going to hold up his end of a bargain. Could this change? Absolutely. It could at the drop of the hat that James Harden could all of a sudden be kicking basketballs across the gym, causing a stir, and the entire picture changes. But until that happens, until he starts throwing a tantrum, let him show up, let him practice, let this team continue to build, and who knows, the Sixers might figure something out here. I'm more optimistic now than I was before Harden coming to camp. Seeing that it went like an actual practice, that there were not these massive distractions, I do think there's a chance this team could find a way to keep the train on the tracks. For now, we will wait. As I mentioned, things can change at a moment's notice, so we will see how the James Harden situation plays out. But good to have him back in the building. Good to see the vibes returning a little bit. And as I mentioned, I do think outside of this James Harden situation, the vibes around the team have been very good. So we'll see what happens throughout the rest of training camp. We'll have plenty more to break down right here on Sixers Digest. Once again, make sure you're hitting that subscribe button, ringing that bell so you're not missing out on any content here. And I'll be back with you talking next time. Peace.